The city of New Seoul burned beneath the purple sky. Commander Hyun stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the planet die below. He had seen many worlds fall, but this one hurt more than the others. This was humanity's last real home. "Sir, the Eastern Defense Grid just collapsed," said his officer. The young woman's voice shook. "The Vrelians are phasing through our shields again." Hyun clenched his fists. Of course they were. The Vrelians always did. For 10,000 years they had ruled the galaxy without challenge. They were beings made of pure energy, existing in multiple dimensions at once. They could walk through walls, bend space, and erase entire planets from existence with a thought. Humanity had been fighting them for 200 years. Humanity had never won a single major battle. "Order all civilian transports to jump now," Hyun said. "Don't wait for escorts." Below, the capital city crumbled. The Vrelians didn't use bombs or lasers. They simply reached into reality and pulled things apart at the atomic level. Buildings unraveled like smoke. Mountains flattened. Oceans boiled away into nothing. 3 billion people had lived on New Seoul yesterday. By tonight, there would be dust. Captain Taeyang burst onto the bridge. The young pilot was bleeding from a cut above his eye. "Commander, my squadron just lost 12 ships in 30 seconds. The Vrelians aren't even trying. They're playing with us." "I know," Hyun said quietly. That was the worst part. The Vrelians saw humanity as insects, amusing little creatures that buzzed around and occasionally needed to be swatted. The Vrelian Empire had destroyed civilizations far more advanced than humanity. Some had fought for centuries. All of them had lost. An alarm screamed through the bridge. Hyun looked at the display and felt his blood turn cold. 3 Vrelian warships had just appeared next to them. They hadn't jumped through space or dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They had simply decided to exist in this location, and reality had obeyed. "All power to engines," Hyun ordered. "Get us out of here." The ship lurched forward, but it was too late. A beam of purple light touched their hull. Hyun waited for death. But instead of destroying them, the beam simply examined them. The Vrelians were curious. They wanted to see what the humans would do. "They're scanning us," said the tactical officer. "No damage yet. Jump," Hyun said. "Now." The Eternal Phoenix tore a hole in space and fled. Behind them, New Seoul died. The Vrelians didn't chase. They never did. Why chase when you could simply erase your enemy from all possible futures? The ship emerged in deep space far from any star. Inside the cargo bays, 50,000 refugees huddled together. They had escaped with their lives and nothing else. Hyun walked through the corridors and saw the faces of the survivors. Children crying, parents staring at nothing. Soldiers who had fought bravely and lost anyway. He found Dr. Minji in the research lab. She was bent over a pile of data crystals. Her eyes red from crying or lack of sleep or both. Minji had been Earth's greatest physicist before the Vrelians turned the planet into an asteroid field. Now she worked in a cramped lab on a refugee ship. "We can't keep running," Hyun said. "I know," Minji replied. She didn't look up from her work. "That's why I've been studying these." She held up one of the crystals. It glowed with a faint blue light. "When the Vrelians destroyed Earth, my team managed to save some data from the old archives." "There's something strange in here, Commander. Something about human brain patterns. What about them?" "We're different," Minji said. She finally looked at him. Her eyes held something Hyun hadn't seen in years. Hope. Every other species in the galaxy has a certain quantum signature. It's how they think, how they process reality. But humans? We're weird. Our consciousness operates on a frequency that doesn't match anything else. So what? Hyun felt tired. He didn't want theories. He wanted weapons. "So maybe the Vrelians can't fully understand us," Minji said. "Maybe there's something about humans that exists in their blind spot." Before Hyun could respond, alarms rang again. The crew rushed to battle stations. Hyun ran to the bridge with Minji right behind him. "Report," he demanded. "It's a message, sir," said the communications officer. "From the Vrelian High Archon himself." The main screen flickered to life. The Vrelian that appeared wasn't really there. It was just a projection of something that existed in too many dimensions for human eyes to properly see. What they saw was a tall figure made of shifting purple light. Vaguely humanoid, but wrong in ways that made the brain hurt. "Humans," the Vrelian said. Its voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "You have been judged. Your species has survived longer than most, and for that you have earned our respect. But all things must end." The Archon paused. Hyun realized it was smiling, or doing whatever Vrelians did that meant the same thing. We will unmake you from history, the Archon continued. One of your solar cycles from now, humanity will cease to have ever existed. We will erase you from the past, the present, and all possible futures. Your works will be dust. Your memories will be void. Even the atoms that once formed your bodies will forget they were ever part of you. The screen went dark. Silence filled the bridge. It was one thing to be destroyed. It was another to be completely erased from reality itself. To never have existed at all. Can they do that? Taeyang asked quietly. Yes, Minji said. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook. They've done it before. 6 species that we know of. They call it probability deletion. It's like you never existed in any timeline. Hyun looked around the bridge at his crew, at the young officer who had reported the shield collapse, at Taeyang with his cocky attitude broken, at Minji with her desperate hope, at the tactical officer who had seen too many battles. These were humanity's finest. These were the people who had survived when billions had died. Get us to the black hole base, Hyun ordered, the one inside the event horizon. If the Vrelians are going to erase us from reality, they'll have to find us first. As the ship jumped into faster-than-light travel, Hyun stared at the empty space where New Seoul had been. 1 solar cycle. Humanity had 1 year to do the impossible. 1 year to find a way to fight beings that existed outside normal space and time. 1 year to prove that even insects could bite. He thought about what Minji had said, about humans being different, about existing in the Vrelians' blind spot. Maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. The eternal phoenix vanished into the darkness between stars, carrying the last free humans in the galaxy toward one final desperate hope. 6 months had passed since New Seoul fell. The human resistance now lived inside a place that should have killed them all. They had built their base inside the event horizon of a collapsed star, where space and time twisted so badly that even Vrelian sensors couldn't penetrate it. It was like hiding inside a black hole. Every day they survived here was a miracle. Dr. Minji hadn't slept in 3 days. She stood in her lab surrounded by screens full of data, drinking her 5th cup of coffee. Next to her, a young woman named Bora worked on a captured Vrelian probe. Bora had been a simple engineer before the war. Now she was humanity's best hope at understanding alien technology. I think I've got something, Bora said. Her fingers danced across the holographic controls. The Vrelians use quantum networks to communicate across dimensions. But look at this, she pulled up a series of wave patterns. To most people, it would look like random noise. But Minji saw it immediately. There's a gap, Minji whispered. In their perception. They can see almost everything. But there's a blind spot in the frequency range where human consciousness operates. Exactly, Bora said. It's like they're looking at reality through a filter, and we just happen to exist in the one color they can't see properly. Minji felt her heart race. This was it. This was what she had been looking for. If they can't fully perceive us, then maybe we can hurt them in ways they won't expect. A noise behind them made both women turn. A girl stood in the doorway. Her name was Yuna, and she was only 17 years old. She should have been dead. 3 months ago, the Vrelians had attacked her colony with a probability deletion weapon. Everyone else had been erased from existence. But Yuna had survived, somehow existing in the space between what was and what wasn't. I can feel them, Yuna said. Her eyes looked distant, unfocused. The Vrelians. When I close my eyes, I can feel their network. It's like standing in an ocean of energy. Minji approached her carefully. Yuna had these episodes often. What do you feel right now? They're spread across so many dimensions, Yuna said. That's how they're so powerful. They exist everywhere at once, but it takes so much energy to maintain. They have to stay perfectly balanced across all those realities or they start to fall apart. Bora and Minji looked at each other. This was huge. What if we could force them into one dimension? Minji said slowly. What if we could trap them in normal space, make them solid like us? It would hurt them, Yuna said. She swayed on her feet. It would hurt them very badly. Commander Hyun entered the lab with Colonel Jiho, his second in command. Jiho had lost his arm in a battle 2 years ago, and now had a cybernetic replacement. The mechanical limb clicked softly as he moved. Tell me you have good news, Hyun said. Minji showed them the data. She explained about the blind spot, about the Vrelians' dependence on maintaining quantum coherence across multiple dimensions. As she spoke, she saw hope dawn on their faces. We can build weapons, Minji said. Probability anchors. They would force reality into a single fixed state in a small area. It wouldn't kill the Vrelians, but it would trap them, make them solid, make them vulnerable. How long to build these weapons? Jiho asked. 2 weeks for a prototype, Bora said. Maybe a month for enough to outfit a strike team. Hyun smiled. It was a grim smile. The smile of a man who had almost forgotten what winning felt like. Do it. Captain Taeyang has been itching for a real fight. Let's give him one. 4 weeks later, Taeyang sat in the cockpit of his fighter, checking his weapons one more time. Strapped to his ship's hull were 3 probability anchor missiles. Each one contained a miniature version of Minji's reality-fixing technology. His strike team consisted of 12 ships. It was small, but it had to be. This was a test. Their target was a Vrelian outpost on the edge of controlled space. Intelligence said it was lightly defended. Intelligence was often wrong, but they had to try. All ships stay tight, Taeyang said into his comm. Remember, the probability anchors have a limited range. Get close before you fire. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the outpost. It was a small station shimmering with purple energy. 2 Vrelian patrol ships hung in space nearby, their forms shifting and changing as they moved through multiple dimensions at once. Anchors ready, Taeyang said. His heart pounded. This was it. Humanity's first real attack in 200 years. The Vrelian ship saw them. They began to phase shift, preparing to tear the human fighters apart. Fire, Taeyang shouted. 12 missiles streaked through space. The Vrelians tried to dodge, but they were too confident. They thought human weapons couldn't hurt them. The probability anchors detonated. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then reality itself seemed to solidify around the Vrelian ships. The purple energy that made up their hulls began to scream across all frequencies. The ships became visible in a way they had never been before, forced into a single dimension, a single moment in time. Taeyang didn't hesitate. He fired his conventional weapons. Lasers and missiles slammed into the now solid Vrelian ships. They exploded in brilliant purple light. For 3 seconds, the comm channel was silent. Then every pilot began to cheer. Did we just? Someone started to ask. Yes, Taeyang said. He was grinning so hard his face hurt. We just killed Vrelians. Actual Vrelians, they destroyed the outpost the same way. The probability anchors forced the station into normal space, and then human weapons tore it apart. When they jumped back to base, they brought evidence. Wreckage. Proof. Commander Hyun stood in the hangar bay as the fighters returned. When Taeyang climbed out of his cockpit, Hyun pulled him into a brief hug. You did it, Hyun said. Humanity's first real victory in 2 centuries. But the celebration didn't last long. Yuna appeared at the edge of the hangar, her face pale. They felt it, she said. The Vrelians. They felt their ships die. They're not treating us like insects anymore. Minji arrived, bringing more bad news. I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout the sector. The Vrelians are mobilizing their Eternal Fleet. The Eternal Fleet? Jiho asked. His cybernetic hand tightened into a fist. The fleet that has never lost a battle. Minji said quietly. Thousands of ships. Some of them are old enough to have destroyed civilizations we've never heard of. They're coming for us. Hyun looked at the wreckage of the Vrelian ships, then at his people. They had won 1 battle. 1 tiny victory against an empire that had ruled for 10,000 years. How long do we have? He asked. 2 weeks, Minji said. Maybe less, Hyun nodded slowly. Then we have 2 weeks to prepare. We've proved we can hurt them. Now we need to prove we can survive them. He turned to address everyone in the hangar. Pilots, engineers, soldiers, scientists, all of them were humanity's last hope. For 200 years we've been running, Hyun said. For 200 years we've been losing. Today that changed. Today we proved that the Supreme Vrelian Empire can bleed. So let them come with their Eternal Fleet. Let them come with all their power and all their rage. We'll be ready. The crowd cheered, but Hyun saw the fear in their eyes. They had won a small battle, but the real war was about to begin. And somewhere in the void between dimensions, the Vrelian High Archon stirred. The insects had developed a sting. How interesting. How foolish. How ultimately pointless. It was time to remind humanity why the Vrelians were called supreme. The Helios Rift looked like reality was broken. Space twisted in impossible ways. Stars appeared in places they shouldn't be. And sometimes you could see through to other dimensions where different versions of the universe existed. It was the perfect place for humanity's last stand. If they died here, at least reality itself would be their grave marker. Commander Hyun stood on the bridge of the Eternal Phoenix, watching the fleet assemble. They had more ships now. Admiral Doyen had arrived with survivors from a dozen colonies, bringing another 300 vessels. It sounded impressive until you remembered they were facing the Vrelian Eternal Fleet. "Contact in 10 minutes, said the tactical officer. Dr. Minji worked at a console nearby, making final adjustments to the reality cage. It was her masterpiece and her nightmare, a weapon built from probability anchor technology, but 1,000 times more powerful. It could force an entire region of space into a single fixed reality. It would trap the Vrelians perfectly. It would also kill billions. "Minji," Yun said quietly, "are you sure about this?" She didn't look up. "No, but I'm sure about what happens if we don't use it. We die, humanity ends. The Vrelians continue erasing species from existence for another 10,000 years. Next to her, a young man named Sunwoo checked equations on his screen. He was Minji's younger brother, a mathematician who had solved the final problems in reality weaponization. His hands shook as he worked. "The math is perfect," Sunwoo said. "But the cost," he trailed off. They all knew the cost. The Vrelians existed across multiple dimensions. So did billions of other innocent beings. Collapsing those dimensional barriers would force everything into a single reality. Most beings would survive, but some wouldn't. Some were too dependent on multidimensional existence. They would simply cease to be. "Ships detected," the tactical officer announced. "Vrelian Eternal Fleet emerging from dimensional space." The screen showed what was coming. Thousands of vessels, each one shimmering with purple energy. Some were the size of cities. Others were larger than moons. And in the center, impossibly vast, was the flagship of High Archon Veltharis himself. "All ships battle formation." Admiral Doyen's voice came over the comm. "Probability anchors ready? This is what we trained for. Make every shot count." The battle began like a storm. Human ships fired probability anchor missiles, and some Vrelian vessels were trapped in normal space long enough to be destroyed. But there were too many. For every Vrelian ship they killed, 3 more appeared. Taeyang led his squadron through the chaos, dodging beams of energy that could erase matter from existence. "This isn't working," he shouted. "There are too many of them." On the Eternal Phoenix, Colonel Jiho monitored the battle. His cybernetic arm moved across the controls, coordinating defensive maneuvers. "We've lost 40 ships in 5 minutes. At this rate, we have 20 minutes before complete fleet destruction." Yun watched the battle unfold. They were losing. Even with their new weapons, they were still losing. The Vrelians were too powerful, too numerous, too ancient. "Activate the reality cage," he said. Minji looked at him. "Commander, if we use it at this range, the dimensional collapse will affect—" "I know," Hyun said. His voice was hard. "Do it anyway." "Wait," Yuna stepped forward. She had been standing quietly at the edge of the bridge, her eyes closed. "Connect me to the probability anchor array. All of it." "That will kill you," Minji said. "Maybe," Yuna said. "But I can see the Vrelians now. I can see how they maintain their existence. If you connect me to the array, I can target them specifically. We won't have to collapse all the dimensions, just the ones the Vrelians use." Sunwoo looked at his equations. "That's actually possible. If someone could maintain focus across that much quantum data, but no human mind should be able to—" "I'm not entirely human anymore," Yuna said quietly. "The probability deletion weapon changed me. I exist partially in their realm now." Hyun made the decision in 2 seconds. "Do it." They connected Yuna to the probability anchor array. She screamed as the energy flowed through her, but she didn't let go. Her consciousness expanded across the battlefield, touching every Vrelian ship, feeling how they existed across dimensions. "I see it," she gasped. "I see how to stop them. But Commander, you need to know something. We can hurt them badly. We can trap them. But to truly defeat them, we'd have to do something terrible." "What?" Hyun demanded. "We'd have to collapse their dimensional existence completely, force them all into single fixed reality. It won't kill them, but it will change them. Make them mortal, like us." Before Hyun could respond, alarms screamed. The Vrelian flagship was charging a weapon. Readings showed power levels that shouldn't be possible. "That's a temporal recursion bomb," Minji said, her voice shaking. "If they fire that, it will erase humanity from all timelines. Past, present, and future. We will never have existed." Hyun looked at his crew, at Minji with her impossible weapon, at Sunwoo with his equations, at Jiho with his steady hands, at Yuna, barely conscious but holding onto the probability anchor array, at the screens showing human ships dying by the dozens. How long until they fire? He asked. 90 seconds, said the tactical officer. Hyun had fought for humanity's survival for 30 years. He had made hard choices before. He had ordered people to die, sacrificed colonies to save others, watched planets burn. But this choice was different. This wasn't about survival. This was about what humanity would become. If they used the reality cage at full power, they would force the Vrelians into mortality. They would hurt billions of innocent beings caught in the crossfire. They would become exactly what they fought against. Monsters willing to sacrifice anyone for their own survival. But if they didn't, humanity ended. Not just in this timeline, but in all of them. Minji, Hyun said. Activate the reality cage, full power. Target the Vrelian fleet specifically. Commander? Sunwoo started. Do it now, Hyun shouted. Minji's hands moved across the controls. The reality cage began to charge. It pulled power from every ship in the fleet, from the black hole base, from emergency reserves. The weapon became visible as a sphere of absolute white light. Reality itself compressed into a single point. Yuna guided it. Her mind stretched across impossible distances, marking every Vrelian ship, every dimensional pathway they used. The Vrelian temporal recursion bomb fired. The reality cage fired 1 second later. The two weapons met in the space between ships. For a moment, reality paused. Time stopped. Everyone saw what would happen if either weapon succeeded. One timeline showed humanity erased from history. Another showed the Vrelians trapped in mortality forever. Then reality made its choice. The reality cage won. The dimensional barriers collapsed in a wave that spread across 50 light-years in seconds. Vrelian ships began to scream, not over comm channels but across all frequencies, a sound that human ears could barely process. Their energy forms, which had existed freely across multiple dimensions for 10,000 years, were being forced into single points in space. They were becoming solid, fixed, mortal. Thousands of Vrelian ships went dark as their power sources failed. They had never needed to think about things like fuel or engines when they could simply exist wherever they wanted. Now they were trapped in normal space and they didn't know how to survive there. But in the center of the fleet, one ship remained active. The flagship of High Archon Veltharis. It pulsed with purple light that hurt to look at. The Archon was fighting the transformation with everything he had. He's trying to escape back into dimensional space, Minji said. If he succeeds, he'll be able to reverse what we did. Hyun opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships target the flagship. Everything we have. End this now. 1,000 human weapons fired at once. But they weren't enough. The flagship's shields held. Then Taeyang's voice came over the comm. Commander, I have an idea. It's crazy, but I think it might work. Do it, Hyun said immediately. Taeyang's fighter accelerated toward the flagship. He had equipped his ship with a probability anchor bomb, meant for last resort situations. Now he flew directly at the Vrelian flagship, dodging defensive fire. Taeyang, pull back, Hyun ordered. Sorry, sir, Taeyang said. His voice was calm. This is what heroes do, right? He crashed his fighter into the flagship's shield and detonated the probability anchor at point-blank range. The explosion forced reality to solidify in a sphere around the flagship. Veltharis's shields failed. Human weapons poured into the gap. The flagship began to break apart, and from the wreckage something emerged. Not a ship, not an energy being, a figure, tall, humanoid, but made of light that was rapidly fading. High Archon Veltharis himself, forced into normal space for the first time in millennia, desperately trying to hold his form together. He looked at the human fleet with what might have been eyes. Then he screamed. And reality itself trembled at the sound of a god learning what it meant to be mortal. The decision came down to a vote. Every human who remained, every survivor, every soldier and civilian would choose. Execute the Vrelians, imprison them, or transform them completely into mortal beings and try to build peace. Commander Hyun broadcast his recommendation across all human channels. I've fought the Vrelians for 30 years. I've lost friends, family, my homeworld. I have every reason to want them dead. But I've learned something in these last few days. The Vrelians forgot what it meant to be alive. They existed for 10,000 years without truly living. If we kill them, we prove we're no different. If we transform them, if we force them to understand mortality, we give them something worse than death. We give them consequences. We give them the chance to earn redemption. I vote for transformation. The vote took 3 days. In the end, 62% of humanity chose transformation. It wasn't unanimous. It wasn't easy, but it was decided. Dr. Minji worked day and night on the final version of the reality cage. This one wouldn't just trap the Vrelians in normal space. It would permanently anchor them to physical existence. They would have bodies, hearts that beat, lungs that breathed. They would age. They would die. They would be mortal in every sense. Are you sure about this? Sunwoo asked his sister. Once we do this, there's no going back. We're fundamentally changing what they are. I know, Minji said. That's the point. But not all the Vrelians wanted transformation. Half of the 3 million captured Vrelians chose death over mortality. They couldn't imagine existing with such limits. High Archon Veltharis gathered these Vrelians and made them an offer. Fight with me, he said. One last battle. One final attempt to stop this. We can escape. We can return to what we were. We can be supreme again. 1,500,000 Vrelians agreed. They pooled their remaining energy and launched an attack on the human fleet. It was desperate and hopeless, but they tried anyway. The battle was short but brutal. Taeyang led the defense, his new abilities allowing him to anticipate Vrelian movements. Bora had created upgraded probability anchors that were even more effective. General Minhos, ground forces boarded Vrelian ships and fought, hand-to-hand against beings that were barely solid. But the real turning point came when Veltharis himself faced Commander Hyun. The Archon had forced himself into a mostly physical form, trying to maintain enough energy to fight. He stood on the bridge of the Eternal Phoenix, having phased through the hull in a last desperate attack. I will not become mortal, Veltharis declared. Purple energy crackled around him. I will not be reduced to this limited existence. Hyun stood his ground. Around him, security forces aimed weapons, but he waved them back. You think mortality is a punishment? You're wrong. It's a gift. A gift? Veltharis laughed. To age? To weaken? To die? Yes, Hyun said. Because only mortality gives life meaning. Every moment becomes precious because you know it will end. Every relationship matters because you know it's limited. You existed for 10,000 years and felt nothing. Give me 80 years of real life over 10,000 years of empty existence. You speak of things you don't understand, Veltharis said, but his voice was uncertain. I understand perfectly, Hyun replied. I'm 47 years old. I've lost people I loved. I've made mistakes I can't fix. I've felt pain and joy and fear and hope. I've lived. Can you say the same? Veltharis looked at his hands. They were almost solid now. He could feel the air on his skin, feel the temperature of the room, feel his heart's beating. Not one heart, 3. That's what Vrelians had when they were mortal. 3 hearts beating in rhythm, I'm afraid. Veltharis admitted quietly. Good, Hyun said. Fear means you have something to lose. That's what makes you alive. Taeyang appeared behind Veltharis, having phased through the wall. His new abilities let him exist partially in the spaces between dimensions, just like the Vrelians once did. It's over, Archon, Taeyang said. Your forces are defeated. You can die fighting or you can live, actually live. Your choice. Veltharis stood between the two humans, the old one who had fought so long, the young one who carried Vrelian energy within him, and he realized something. Humanity wasn't just defeating the Vrelians. Humanity was becoming something new, a bridge between mortal and energy, between physical and dimensional. They were evolving in ways that the Vrelians had forgotten were possible. What will you do with us? Veltharis asked. After the transformation? We'll help you, Hyun said. We'll teach you how to be mortal, how to eat, sleep, breathe, how to live with limits, and in return, you'll help us understand what you know about dimensional space. Together, maybe we become something better than either species alone. Veltharis made his choice. He stopped fighting. He surrendered, and within hours, the rest of the Vrelian resistance did the same. Yuna prepared for the final transformation. She had been existing in the space between dimensions since the first battle. Her consciousness spread across the probability anchor network. Now she would serve one last purpose. I'll be the anchor, she told Minji. My consciousness will hold the reality cage in place permanently. The Vrelians will never be able to escape mortality. It will trap you too, Minji said. You'll exist between dimensions forever. Never fully alive, never fully energy. Are you sure? Yuna smiled. She looked younger than her 17 years. Someone has to watch over both species. Make sure humans don't become the next Vrelians. Make sure the Vrelians learn to be truly alive. I can do that. I'm the only one who exists in both worlds. The final transformation took place in the Helios Rift, where reality was already strange. 3 million Vrelians were gathered, some willing, some frightened, some still angry. The entire human fleet surrounded them. Dr. Minji activated the reality cage for the last time. Yuna merged with it, her consciousness becoming one with the machine. The weapon fired, spreading across 200 light-years in waves. The Vrelians screamed. Their energy forms, maintained across dimensions for 50,000 years, collapsed into singular points. They became solid, physical, mortal. It took hours. When it was over, 3 million new beings stood in space, confused and terrified. They had bodies now, real bodies, tall and thin with purple-tinted skin, 3 hearts, large eyes, long fingers. They looked almost human, but alien enough to remind everyone what they had been. High Archon Veltheris was among them. He touched his face with solid hands and felt tears for the first time in millennia. Not energy patterns, real tears made of salt water. "What have you done to us?" he whispered. Commander Hyun's ship pulled alongside. "We've given you what you gave up 50,000 years ago. We've given you life, real life, with all its pain and beauty and limits and possibilities. You were considered supreme. Now you get to be something better. You get to be alive." Over the next weeks, the transformation continued. The former Vrelians learned to eat food instead of consuming quantum energy. They learned to sleep, to feel hunger and thirst and exhaustion, to laugh and cry and fear and hope. It was overwhelming. Many struggled. Some couldn't adapt, but slowly something changed. The Vrelians began to understand. One of them ate fruit for the first time and wept at the taste. Another watched a sunset and realized they had never truly seen beauty before. A third held hands with a human child and felt warmth that wasn't just temperature but connection. Veltheris found Hyun one day, 6 months after the transformation. The former Archon looked different. He had learned to smile. His eyes held something they never had before. "Life. I owe you an apology," Veltheris said, "and I owe humanity a debt I can never repay. We destroyed your world, killed billions, ruled with cruelty masked as superiority, and you responded with mercy. Why? Because we're human," Hyun said. "We're complicated. We hold grudges and show mercy. We fight and forgive. We destroy and create. We're not supreme. We're just alive, and that's enough." 1 year after the transformation, the Helios Accord was signed. A coalition government formed between humans and former Vrelians. Taeyang opened an academy to train both species in understanding their new shared reality. General Minho led joint military forces against other threats in the galaxy. Dr. Minji continued her research, studying how the transformation had changed both species. Humans were developing new abilities. Vrelians were discovering what it meant to have limited time. Both were becoming something neither had been before. Yuna remained between dimensions. Her consciousness spread across the reality cage network. She watched over both species, a silent guardian. Sometimes people felt her presence when they made important choices, a gentle pressure toward compassion, toward understanding, toward life over supremacy. Jisoo discovered something remarkable in her medical research. Vrelian DNA and human DNA were starting to merge in some individuals. Children were being born with abilities from both species, a new generation that could phase between dimensions briefly, that could sense reality in ways neither parent species could. Evolution in real time. High Archon Veltheris, now simply called Vel, stood on Earth with Commander Hyun. The planet was being rebuilt, green spreading across the dead rocks, oceans filling the empty basins, life returning. "We destroyed this world," Vel said quietly, "and now we help rebuild it." "There's a poetry to that, a justice. There's hope in it," Hyun corrected. "Hope that even—" Taeyang woke up in the medical bay 3 days after the battle. His whole body hurt and he couldn't remember how he'd survived. The last thing he remembered was flying into the Vrelian flagship. "Easy," a voice said. A woman in a medical uniform was checking his vital signs. Her name tag read Jisoo. "You got lucky. Your escape pod ejected automatically before the explosion. You have burns and broken ribs, but you'll live." "Did we win?" Taeyang asked. Jisoo's expression was complicated. "Define win." She helped him to a window. Outside, hundreds of Vrelian ships floated in space, dark and powerless. Some were being boarded by human marines. Others were surrounded by human vessels, weapons ready in case they tried to escape. "They're trapped," Jisoo explained. "The reality cage forced them into normal space. Most of them have never had to deal with things like gravity or air or physical bodies before. They're basically helpless." Taeyang should have felt triumphant. Instead, he felt strange, empty. "Where's Commander Hyun?" "On the Eternal Phoenix, along with everyone else." Something happened. Something they found on the Vrelian ships. General Minho had led the boarding parties onto the disabled Vrelian vessels. He was a large man with scars covering half his face from an old battle. He had seen terrible things in the war, but nothing had prepared him for what he found inside the Vrelian command ship. The corridors were wrong. They bent in directions that shouldn't exist, even now. His Marines moved carefully, weapons ready. They expected traps, defenses, last stands. What they found was worse. They found Vrelians crying. At least that's what it looked like. The Vrelians were still mostly energy, but the reality cage had forced them into more solid forms. They looked vaguely humanoid now, tall and thin, made of purple light that flickered like a dying candle, and they were huddled together in groups making sounds that the translator couldn't process. Sounds of pain, of fear, of loss. "Sir, should we secure them?" one of his Marines asked. Minho looked at the Vrelians. These were the beings who had destroyed Earth, who had killed billions, who had ruled the galaxy with absolute power for 10,000 years. Now they cowered in corners, confused and frightened. "Secure them gently," Minho said. "And someone get Dr. Minji down here. She needs to see this." In the command center of the Vrelian ship, they found something that changed everything. A data core. Still active, still accessible. Minho's tech specialist, a young man named Junho, managed to interface with it. "General," Junho said, his voice shaking, "you need to see this. It's their history." The holographic display showed images. A planet, beautiful and green. A civilization, advanced and peaceful. They called themselves the Vrelians, but they were nothing like the energy beings that humanity had fought. They were solid, corporeal, living normal lives. Then something came. A wave of destruction that moved through the galaxy. It had no name, no form. It simply erased everything it touched from reality. The Vrelians watched as neighboring civilizations vanished, billions of beings gone in moments. "They were running from something," Junho whispered. The images showed Vrelian scientists working desperately. They discovered how to transcend physical form, to exist across multiple dimensions. It was the only way to survive. They transformed their entire species, giving up their bodies, their mortality, their very nature of being, all to escape the thing that was coming. 50,000 years ago, Minho said. They've been running for 50,000 years. But the transformation had a cost. To maintain their existence across dimensions required enormous energy. Energy they took from other civilizations. Not out of cruelty, out of necessity. They needed to consume quantum energy to survive. And over time, they forgot why they had transcended in the first place. They forgot they were refugees. They only remembered being supreme. When Commander Hyun saw the data, he sat down heavily. Minji stood beside him, tears running down her face. Colonel Jiho stared at the images, his cybernetic hand clenching and unclenching. "They're not conquerors," Minji said. "They're survivors like us." "They destroyed Earth," Hyun said flatly. "They killed billions of humans." "To survive," Minji replied. "Just like we're doing. Hyun, we just used a weapon that affected billions of innocent beings to save ourselves. Are we any different?" Before Hyun could answer, Jisoo burst into the room with urgent news. "Commander, you need to see this. Now." She brought data from the medical bay. Soldiers who had been exposed to collapsing Vrelian energy were showing strange changes. Their cellular structure was shifting. Some could phase through solid objects for brief moments. Others could sense things across vast distances. "They're developing abilities," Jisoo said. "Vrelian abilities. The energy exposure is causing mutations. Not harmful ones. Evolutionary ones. Taeyang was one of them. When he concentrated, his hand could pass through solid metal. He stared at it in shock. "What's happening to me?" he asked. "You're changing," Minji said. She ran scans on him. "The Vrelian energy is integrating with your quantum signature. You're becoming something between human and Vrelian, a bridge species." Admiral Doyun called an emergency meeting of all senior officers. The conference room was crowded with commanders, captains, scientists, and representatives from what remained of human government. "We need to decide what to do with the Vrelians," Doyun said. "We have 3 million of them in custody. Most are barely functional in their current state. We have 3 options: execute them, imprison them, or try to help them adapt to mortality." "Execute them," said one captain. "They destroyed our worlds. They deserve death." "We're better than that," another officer argued. "If we commit genocide, we become the monsters." The debate raged for hours. Hyun listened to all of it, saying nothing. Finally, someone asked him directly, "Commander Hyun, you fought the Vrelians longer than anyone. What do you think?" Hyun stood slowly. "I think we're asking the wrong question. The question isn't, what do we do with the Vrelians? The question is, what do we become?" He walked to the display showing the Vrelian history. They became monsters to survive. They forgot their purpose, forgot their compassion, forgot what it meant to be alive. They ruled for 10,000 years and it meant nothing. They were empty. Powerful but empty. He turned to face the room. "We can kill them. We'd be justified. They've earned that fate 1,000 times over. But if we do, what does that make us? Another empty species, surviving but not living?" A young girl entered the room. Nari was only 9 years old, small and thin with large dark eyes. She was one of the children rescued from a destroyed colony. But she was special. Sometimes she saw things that hadn't happened yet. "The future splits here," Nari said in her small voice. Everyone fell silent. "I can see it. If we kill them, we become cold, hard. We survive, but we forget why survival matters. We become the next Vrelians, just in a different form." "And if we don't kill them?" Doyun asked gently. "If we don't, the path is harder. Scary, but there's light at the end. Real light, not just survival, something new, something that's never existed before." That night, Taeyang found himself able to do something impossible. When he focused, he could sense Vrelian consciousness nearby, one in particular. Strong, ancient, angry. He followed the sensation to a secured cell. Inside was High Archon Veltheris, or what remained of him. The being who had ruled the galaxy was now trapped in a mostly solid form, sitting against a wall. "I can feel you, human," Veltheris said. His voice was different now, smaller, tired. "You carry our energy within you." "You tried to erase humanity from existence," Taeyang said. "Yes," Veltaris replied, "as we erased 6 species before you, as would have erased 100 more, because we were supreme, because we forgot what it meant to be mortal, to be vulnerable, to be afraid." The Archon looked at his own hands. They were starting to solidify further, becoming more like human hands. "Do you know what it's like to exist for 10,000 years without ever being afraid? To be so powerful that nothing matters? It's empty, so terribly empty." Taeyang didn't know what to say. This was the being who had ordered the destruction of Earth, who had killed people Taeyang loved. But now he just looked, tired, lost, mortal. "What will you do with us?" Veltharis asked. "I don't know," Taeyang said honestly. "Some want to kill you all. Some want to imprison you. Some think we should help you." "Help us?" Veltharis laughed bitterly. "After everything we've done?" "Yeah," Taeyang said. "Crazy, right? But humans are weird like that. We hold grudges and show mercy at the same time. We're complicated." He turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, I can feel your energy. I know you're scared, I know you're in pain, I know you don't understand mortality yet, but you will. And maybe that's the point. Maybe being mortal is better than being supreme." As Taeyang walked away, Beltheris sat in his cell and felt something he hadn't experienced in millennia. He felt his heart beat. Just once. Then again. A rhythm. A reminder. A promise that he was alive in a way he had forgotten. And for the first time in 10,000 years, High Archon Beltheris wept.